Thank you.
Okay. You know what? It's 6 o'clock and people are still coming in, but we'll start.
Okay, you'll start.
Okay. Go ahead, Rebtezen, over to you.
I think what I'll do is what I generally do, as my friends know, start in the middle. The point of this talk is what I feel is some serious, important lesson in Birchas Koyanim, but I'll still start in the middle. I noted that I come from a family of survivors, and I can't.
Please mute yourselves.
From quite a young age, I was contemplating the question of what is this suffering about, especially since the two people I loved the most, my mother and father. And actually, I must admit that when I was young, I didn't know that they went through, I don't think I connected it to suffering because they were quite upbeat people. The only thing I really saw was my mother cry every Friday night when she had left, and she would mention the names of all the beloveds. And the other thing was, once my father was putting me to sleep when I was a little girl, and I asked him, Tati, can you tell me what it was like when you were a yingala, when you were young, what happened to you? And he started to tell me some kind of story about a visit that he was going to pay to his Mima Rifcha, and he just got choked up and he couldn't talk anymore. He just couldn't talk. And I don't know if I was 8 or 7 or 9, but I never again, ever asked about home. And he never spoke about home, ever. Until the last Pesach, by the Seder, he started to say something about his father. And again, he got choked up. He wasn't able to finish, and that was it. So that was the actual, I didn't have any actual experience from my parents' behavior in general. But I knew that it was, first of all, I knew we had no family. It was my mother and my father, my sister, and I had one cousin who was the daughter of my mother's brother, who was nifter in the war, and her mother remarried. And that was basically that was the family. There was some distant cousins, and there were cousins who were distant. They didn't live anywhere in proximity of where we lived, so he didn't have any connection with them. And when my parents came from Europe, they spent a certain amount of time, I have no idea, before I was born, in Williamsburg, living with a family. It was very hard to get apartments. And somehow, by the time I know, by the time that I remember, we lived in Arvern, which is a little watering hole, a neighborhood that exists between the bay and the ocean. And the first, but maybe it's 3 blocks wide, the entire neighborhood, and 30 or 40 blocks long. The first block on the ocean was a place where people came for the summer. A lot of Fruma people came there for the summer. During the year, there were probably 20 Fruma families. And during the time, they kept on moving out to Far Rockaway and or Brooklyn, other neighborhoods, Fruma neighborhoods. But from when I remember, for the first from 8 to 14, we lived in Auburn. And then we moved to Far Rockaway, but there was no family. And I had one friend, there was no Hamish school. My parents wanted to send us to Beis Yaakov, but it meant traveling on the subway for an hour and some. And the only school that was in the neighborhood was a bus ride about 20 minutes away. It was a Mizrahi school, boys and girls. And that's where I went for elementary school. And we had this one friend, Rechi Stern, and we went together to Hailai. Eventually, her family moved to Far Rockaway, and then finally, we also moved to Far Rockaway. But during those years growing up, it was very, very lonesome and painful that there was no family. I asked my friend Refi if her grandmother would be my grandmother and her Zaidi could be my Zaidi. And it just was, I read everything I could get my hands on as I got older about the war. And it just trying to understand what all the suffering was for and about. How does that work? Very, very lonesome in school. It was a school of American children from American parents, and they seemed to not even know that there had been a war. And I really felt dislocated. For high school, Refi and I, and one other from a girl that was in Highline, not in our class, but we went to Beis Yaakov in Williamsburg. And I thought, oh my goodness, now I'll be in a from a school and I'll have friends and da-da, and it'll be marvelous. But it wasn't like that. We came from out of town, quote unquote, and all the out of town girls, the girls that came from Washington Heights and the girls that came from Crown Heights and came from Borough Park, and everybody came with a friend or two. And I came with Rechi, and all the girls from Williamsburg were in a different class. We lived far away, so it wasn't a question that you could, easily have after school connection. Most of the girls went to camp. My mother, being European, didn't believe girls should go anywhere alone. And so that was school. Now, then my friend Rechi got engaged, and it was the summer. We davened together all the years. My parents were friends with her parents, and we davened all the years together in Rabbi Rubin's shul, the Chassidish shul in the neighborhood. But this summer, when she got married, the Bostener Rebbe came to Far Rockaway, and he was staying in Nachman Mendel's house. Now, Rabbi Mendel was a teacher in Highline, and he was somebody that took in the first graders. He spoke to the parents and to the child, and he was my first day in school, and my mother told him that I'm Triya an Enikol and and I should please see to it that I should be taken care of in school, and I shouldn't change. The background should remain, even though it's a different kind of school, but you should keep an eye on me, sort of. Every year, he happened to be, his mother was a Bostener Rebtezen, and he used to travel. Every year he went to Mount Kisco, and his house was empty. And he used to tell the Bostener Rebbe every year, my holy shver, come to Far Rockaway, the air is good, it's on the ocean. My father-in-law had a heart condition. He said, it's good for you. But the Rebbe Zefren went every year to his mother in Boston. So Sasha lived in Boston, and they had a place on the bay in Nantasket, and he went every summer to Bobby. The whole family went there. This summer, for some reason, he took up Nachman Mendel's offer. He took the house. He opened the shul. He had a minyan there, and he had all people who were Bostener Rebtezen came to daven. The Stearns were Bostener Rebtezen. I had no idea. So that Shabbos, her Shabbos Sheva Brachos, the davening was in the Bostener Shtibel in Far Rockaway. And I went, and I met my shviga to be, and she wanted to go and visit someone, and I said I offered to take her. Backtrack. My father was sick from the time that I was 8 years old. He had a major heart attack, and in those years it was extremely dangerous. And he was very sick. And over the years, he had many attacks and many different kinds of problems, medical problems. So I became very close to the Rebbeinu Shalom because he was the only one who could help me. I didn't have anyone in the world who could solve this problem. And I begged him, please, 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 for Refuah Shalema. And I promised left, right, and center that was going to be good. And now each time I promised that it was going to be even better Then I had promised the time before. I said, I'll do anything and I'll do everything. Please just send my father to Shalem and bring him home from the hospital. And as I got a little older, I became more sophisticated, and I saw that my father was quite ill. So I started negotiating, and I begged Rabbi Shalom, I'll tell you what, you know that this is really terrible for me and impossibly difficult. We have no family, and he's everything to me. And so if you just let him live until my oldest son's bar mitzvah, I will accept it. But before that, I really, it's impossible for me I just won't be able to deal with it. My father was nifter 3 weeks before my chasana. And I was devastated. I was absolutely, and I said, Rabbi Shalom, the man had such a hard life and had so many tzuras. What would have been, you have so many years, couldn't he live to see? Now I was getting married, he would have some nachas. He met my father-in-law, he met my husband, they spoke in learning, and they had such a fabulous time. What would have been so terrible if he could have lived and had some nachas now? And I knew that the argument was wasted, and I better get my act together, because the Rabbi Shalom runs the world, and there's no point in fighting with him. And if I keep up on this track, I won't end up anywhere that's any good. So I just stuffed it. And I used to tell myself, what's a little heartache? It's over here. It's just like a stomach ache higher up. You don't die because you have a stomach ache. So you don't die because you have heartache. You just live. And you don't always feel it. In any case, Baruch Hashem, I got married. My father-in-law was unbelievable to me. He was just like a father. And he took care of my sister and my mother. And he was really extremely, outstandingly wonderful. Now, my dear father-in-law had a terrible heart condition. And he was a very sick man. And I lived the next 25 years in perpetual, dreadful fear that something would happen to him. And then when he was nifter, I thought to myself, my goodness, he lived 25 years. You were together with him for 25 years. You had that wonderful time, and you spoiled it for yourself by being scared and miserable, afraid that something would happen to him, instead of enjoying what you had. And I said, I'm not going to make that mistake again. Okay, I will learn my lesson from this. 6 months after my father-in-law was nifter, my dear husband, Bostener Rebtezen, had quintuple bypass surgery, totally unexpected. It happened from one day to the next. After my father-in-law was nifter, my husband said, the prudent thing is, considering the family history, is I should have a checkup. And he went to the doctor and he had a checkup, and the cardiologist said, well, why don't we take a stress test? And then the stress test was positive, but he said, no, maybe that happens, and sometimes it doesn't really show anything. We'll watch you and we'll see. And a few weeks later, a chassid in Los Angeles had a baby boy, and he wanted to give the name, and he wanted the Rebbe to come to be sandik. And the morning of the flight, the Rebbe wasn't feeling well. So he said, let's ride by Dr. Feldman's office and we'll see. Let him take a cardiogram. If everything's okay, I'll go. So we did that. And we came to Dr. Feldman's office, took a cardiogram, and he said, you aren't going anywhere. Your cardiogram has changed from the last time till this time. You are going straight to the hospital. You won't even walk over there. I'm going to take you over in a wheelchair. And a week later, there was quintuple bypass surgery. I spent the next 50 odd years with a lot of pain and fear. And it's only now, the Rebbe was nifter 4 years ago, and sometime in this period of time, it occurred to me, my goodness, that my father was really deathly ill all those years, and he could have been nifter any time. And Hashem kept him alive so that he should meet my beloved father-in-law and my wonderful husband and have nachas. And I was the one that made him that nachas. Hashem gave that matana to me. He saved my father so that I could give my father nachas. It was the dream of my life. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, not only did you not ever have Hakar Satoiv for this unbelievable gift, you really were a coffee toiver because you were very angry. Admitting it or not, you were very angry that he did that to you and that he did that to your father. And then I was thinking, and I started realizing how many wonderful things that seemed quite awful at the time Hashem did for me. When I was in school in Hailai, I was very uncomfortable. I was sad, very, very sad about my parents, and sad about being in that school, and sad that I didn't have any friends, and I couldn't play jump rope, and I wasn't good at punch ball. And now that I look back, I was thinking, Hashem watched me that whole time. I was such a lonely child. If that experience had been a good experience, I might have ended up in Far Rockaway. Well, that would have been not the gift that I have, and I have a great gift. I have had a supreme, magnificent, unbelievable gift. And then I thought, it never occurred to me that it was absolutely unbelievable that I became a Kala in Rabbi Mendel's house. That man that my mother took me to the first day that I went to school. And it was pretty amazing that my father-in-law was in Far Rockaway altogether. And then all these good friends had the idea that this was a shidduch. Friends that knew me as I grew. My parents knew us from forever and were Hasidim of the Rebbe. Rabbi Mendel and the Stearns and Shul Shimano. Well, it was amazing. In fact, it was quite unbelievably amazing. My parents had no shaykhs with Bostener Rebtezen at all. And there were places that they had much closer shaykhs like Chechoiv and even Rabbi Rubin and the Chevra from Kasho Yeshiva and the Hinsdorfer. There were places that Shidduchim could come from. And the whole thing came about through my friend Rechi Stern. That was quite amazing. Okay, so much for the story. And the pain was real yichi suffering. And the older I got, the more difficult the Second World War became. Until I got smart enough in my old age to realize Hashem's way, way, way smarter than we are. Infinitely more compassionate and unbelievably loving. When I started to think about this Hakaras HaTov and trying to think did I ever serve the Rabbeinu Shalom out of love? Did I ever really serve him because I loved him? The bracha that we make in the morning and at night before Shema Yisrael both end in a statement of Hashem loves the Jews. Oy hey v'ama Yisrael, boyecha be'ama Yisrael bi'ahava. He loves the Jewish people. He chose them because he loves them. After that, we say that pasuk, we recite Shema, the Kriya Shema. Now, the first pasuk, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, is a statement of our belief. It is the statement that's recited by Jews when they are being killed on Kiddush Hashem. Hear this, understand this, know this. Hashem, now that name, that's the name of Hashem. He has many names. A name is a handle to hold the concepts that you know about whatever is named. The name Hashem includes his complete completeness, his eternal eternity, his impeccable perfection, and other things. and it is called the Shem Ayin Beis. It is the name of love. It is the name of compassion. Hashem, that quality, Hashem, Elokeinu, He is our God. He gave us the Torah. Kale, it's a word that might be seen as a combination. Kale means mighty, but how mighty? Kale zon, hazon es ha'olam kuloi, betuvoi, bechein, bechesed, u'berachamim. That He feeds every single creature on this planet, bechein, bechesed, u'berachamim, with love and loving kindness and free giftedness, and this creation finds favor. It has chen in His eyes. Kale, He is our God that gave us the Torah because He loves us, and we have chen in His eyes. Kale, Yud K, Elokeinu is a combination of Kale, Yud K. Yud K is also a name of the Rabbeinu Shalom, of the Creator. Beko Hashem Tzuroi Lomim, that the Rabbeinu Shalom, Yud K, Ko, created this world with that name. With Yud, He created the spiritual world, and with the Hey, He created the physical world. And we might understand that as the creation proceeded through 10 statements. Most of those statements are Vayomer Elokim Yehi, let there be. And Yehi, the word Yehi is made up of the letters Yud and K. So calling into creation, the creation, He used those letters. Kale, Yud, K. Nun Vav is the gematria of the word Levadcha, you alone. We know you are you alone in the universe, the creator, the lover, the sustainer, the one who gave us the Torah, the one who took, you are the one who took us for your people. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, again that name of loving kindness. Echad, the gematria of Echad is 13. Aleph is 1, Ches is 8, Dalet is 4, that adds up to 13. 13, Hashem has 13 midas of Rahmanas, of love. Hashem, those are the attributes of compassion that Hashem told to Moshe Rabbeinu after the Chet HaEgel. And He said, when the Jews will sin, say this, recognize this, connect to me in this fashion, and I will forgive them. Hashem, Kale, Rachum, loving, compassionate, Chanun, forgiving, or Chen, we find, what's the word for Chen in English? My goodness. We're His sweetie pies. Chen, Chanun, Barachim, El Hapayim, long.
Grace.
Grace.
Grace?
Grace, yes. Grace, okay. I think English is a verscholpene language. You can never express the concepts that Hebrew express in English with any comfort. Anyway, these are the 13 midas of kindness that Hashem has. So what are we saying? Hashem Echad. There's a parish on why it says Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Kel Racham V'Chanun. Hashem before the person sins, He loves us, and Hashem after we sinned, He still loves us. And that may be considered when we say Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, when we are called upon to make that statement with Mesiras Nefesh. Echad is also the notion of Melech, that He is the king. Nothing in this universe happens except that He deigns that it should happen. Now, there are lots of things that happen in this universe that we are not quite so happy about. and we don't really understand why they need to happen. Nonetheless, we know Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And we're taught that the basis of Yiddishkeit, David HaMelech reduced them to 11 and so on, going down until Bo Habakuk, the Hamidan al Achas. What is the core of Judaism? Bo Habakuk, the Navi, the prophet Habakkuk said, the core of Judaism is Tzaddik be'emunoso yichyeh. A righteous man lives through emunah, with emunah. Now, faith in God and trust in God, not so hard to happen, not so hard to have when everything goes smooth, when the ride is as smooth as silk. But the bumpier the ride is, the more difficult, the more painful, the more sorrowful, that's already a test. That is the test of our lives. Why did Hashem create the world? Did he know what it would look like before he created it? Did he know that Adam would eat? No sooner that he stood on his feet and he got the commandment not to eat from the Eitz Hadas, the tree of knowledge, good and evil. Did Hashem know before he ate that he would eat? Of course he knew. Could Hashem have put someone in the Garden of Eden that would not have eaten? Of course he could. Moshe Rabbeinu, Avraham Avinu, a Tzaddik Tomim, David HaMelech. How do we understand it? The first day of the creation, and man who that it was a possibility, there existed a possibility that he would live and live and live, was punished, was relegated to death. He had to die. Tzaddik be'emunoso yichyeh. I want to ask another question and then I'll join them together. How do we understand that the entire world is idol worshiping? What kind of notion? Are they fools, all of them, that they would worship idols? Can an idol do anything for anybody? What was the point of their religion if it couldn't ensure that they could have whatever they wanted because they were spiritual? Look at the world and ask yourself if it looks to you like a spiritual world created by people who are believers in a spiritual world. Chachamim, we're taught with it's the goyim are often referred to as oivdei koichavim umazolos. They worship the stars and the constellations. And astrology has been a very thriving business all through history. If we understand man as an intelligent creature, we might understand his involvement with koichavim and mazolos as looking at the world and seeing something's going on here. There are powers. There are times when fruits grow, flowers blossom, trees blossom, food grows, and there are times when everything is dead and dormant. There are times when the flocks give birth. It's a time. There's day and night. There are seasons. As the seasons change, there's a change in the constellations in heaven. They were very intimately acquainted with the stars and the constellations. And there's one theory about the pyramids that the window, there was a tiny little window, and at the solstice, the Sirius star, the dog star, shone directly on the coffin of the pharaoh. The pagans, the idol worshippers, the oivdei koichavim and mazolos, worshiped the sun. Sun worship was a pretty prevalent kind of avodah zarah. What is that? The sun obviously has power and obviously causes things to grow, and people need food, and animals need food. Ah, the sun. We will worship the sun because we want what the sun has to give. Now, when we go to war, well, we'll worship the war god, the Mars, because it's a bloody star. So it's red. So it must have to do with war. Now, sometimes we worship Mars and we win the war. Other times we lose the war because that's how Mazel is. Luck is fickle. Lady Luck, they didn't really know. And there was no way, of course, to know. But it did seem to work sometimes. And then everybody else, if they saw the Romans worshiping these gods, and the Romans were so powerful, then we will worship as well, because we want to be able to have the benefit of good luck. That's not exactly a religion, but that's Elohim Acherim. And that's a person. The person himself is the Elohim Acherim. The person himself is looking to get the best ride out of this show that he can. And this seems to be the most possible avenue. Hashem, in his perfect infinitude and almightiness, wants us to find him. He could absolutely make everybody do everything right without any effort whatsoever. However, why did he create this world with human beings who would be so frail and apt to sin? It's an educational experience for man that ultimately man will come to know through himself and his life and his choices that there isn't any other way and that there isn't any other koyach. Now, that's really the job of the Jews. We were meant to follow the Torah and live that kind of life, different than the Goyim, different than the people who live entrenched in a material world, and where what matters is what you have and what you have accomplished, what you can do. That makes who you are, and that makes what kind of life you have. For Hashem, what makes who you are? What kind of heart you have, what kind of values you have, what kind of deeds you will do. And not because it pays, and not because you want something from him. It's not, there's a term about Hani Kalbin Dachsifin, these brazen-faced dogs that call like a dog barks, have, give. When a human being lives in fear and hunger, and all he's concerned about is getting, have, he is the Elohim Acherim, and he's looking for any way to get what he can get. A Jew is meant to live by giving. These are the things that have no measure, no limit. This is a Mishnah in Peah. Gemilas Chasodim, acts of loving kindness. And Talmud Torah. There's no shia to how much Torah to learn. You can learn and learn and learn and learn. Or you can do chesed. As a matter of fact, we are taught, the world stands on three things: Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasodim. Learning of Torah, worshiping the Rebbeinu Shalom, and doing acts of loving kindness. Tzaddik b'emunasa yichya, that situation needs to be in a place where Hashem's not showing his full hand, hardly ever. Moshe Rabbeinu asked, why is it that tzaddik v'raloi, that a righteous person will suffer, Rasha v'toivloi, and there are evil people who they have a great ride and a good time? Tzaddik be'emunaso yichya, the point of the existence of the tzaddik is that he doesn't need a good ride to believe in the Rabbeinu Shalom. He believes in the Rabbeinu Shalom. And the only thing, his purpose in being here is to serve that Almighty Father who loves us. Who always loves us. Now, let's go a little bit to Birchas Koyanim. I wondered, in the morning, we make a bracha, Birchas Torah, we thank Hashem, Asher Bocha Banu, that he chose us and he gave us the Torah. In France, it was instituted that immediately thereupon, there should be some Torah learning, because when people go to work, it's not clear when they will be free to learn Torah, so that it should be a bracha that is fulfilled by the person. I'm thank you that you gave us the Torah, you picked us and you gave us the Torah. Let me learn now Torah and show my appreciation and my pleasure in being able to learn your Torah, the honor that you have given us, that you gave us this holy Torah, this Torah that attaches us to you every minute that we are attached to it. So in France, they instituted to say the psukim of Birkas Koyanim. Yevarecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. Hashem should bless you and keep you. His countenance should shine upon you. Should Yis Hashem panav, and he should give you peace. I was wondering though why those psukim particularly were chosen. I often thought, I wonder why they didn't pick Anochi Hashem Elokecha. If tzaddik b'emunaso yichya, let us state our emunah, that emunah, our belief, our trust in him, no matter what, in every situation, even if he requires that we give up our lives in order that we not worship some other deity, we still love him and trust him. Why wouldn't we say Anochi Hashem Elokecha, Asher Yitzisicha, or Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu? Why do we say these psukim? And with the times, I guess heaven had mercy on me, because it just always had this, I wonder why, and I didn't find an answer. And Hashem sent me an answer, and it was an answer like this, because when did they recite the Birchas Koyanim, these brachas? These blessings were recited at the end of the service in the temple. And the notion being that the point of the service in the temple and the point of Hashem giving the Torah to the Jews was to bring the bracha to the Jews, so that the bracha should come to Klal Yisrael. Wow, I love that idea. And when we make Birchas Torah, we say these psukim to become aware that Hashem loves us, and the point of life, of everything, of Torah and Avodah, which we said these are two things that the world stands upon, the purpose of that is to bring the bracha to Klal Yisrael. I was in seventh heaven. So then I was looking for Perushim on these psukim and thinking about the psukim in general, and it occurred to me how count the words. They count the letters and they count how much letters they add up to. And so I thought, how many words are in these psukim? The first pasuk has 3 words. The second pasuk has 5 words. And the third pasuk has 7 words. 3, 5, 7 are numbers that have meaningful connotations for us. 3 is the Ovis, and the forefathers, the 3 fathers, and 5 are the Torah, the books of the Torah, and 7 are the 7 guests who come to the sukkah, or the 7 midas of Hashem, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, these 7 characteristics, qualities that Hashem has, and man is supposed to partake of. We are supposed to be Baalei Chesed. We are supposed to be loving, kind and loving creatures, and mighty, heroic creatures, and creatures who are well versed in the Torah, which is Tiferes. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. So let's look. What are the words? Maybe the words are connected to these concepts. The first pasuk is Yivarechecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. Now, Yivarechecha, that really has to do with Avraham Avinu. 3 words, the forefathers. Okay, Yivarechecha has to do with Avraham Avinu for sure. After the Akedah, after he brought Yitzchak, he took him onto the altar, and then the angel told him, no, don't sacrifice him. Take it. You don't have to bring him for a sacrifice. After that, Avraham Avinu saw a ram, and he took the ram and put the ram on the altar and brought a sacrifice. After that, the Malach calls him, it says, Shenis, Vayikar Malach Hashem, Shenis min hashamayim. The first time the angel addressed Avraham Avinu, he did not give him a blessing. But the second time, after he brought this offering, the Malach says, Yan asher asisa, because you did this thing and you did not withhold your son from me, Ki vorech, you did not withhold your son. Ki vorech avarechecho, I will bless you with a complete blessing. Now that was the blessing in a previous conversation that Avraham Avinu had with Hashem. Hashem said, I'm going to give you a blessing. And Avraham Avinu said to him, what blessing? I don't need anything. I have no children. That's the blessing I would like, and you have not seen fit to give me children. And at that time, Hashem said, you will have a child. And then Avraham Avinu gave birth to this child. And then when Yitzchak was 37, Hashem told him, bring him for a korban. So now that you were so loyal to me, and you were prepared to give away the dearest thing in your life because I requested it, I will give you the full blessing. I will give you many, many children, not just one Yitzchak. Now, if we think about it, it's quite interesting. Why did he want children? He wanted children. Ki yadativ, the pasuk says, I love him because I know that all he wants is to teach his family after him that they should love me and be attached to me and go in my ways. That's all he wants out of his life. And I love him for that. I love him, he loves me, and I love him. Now we have his children, Avraham Avinu, included in his progeny are Esav, Yishmael, and Esav. The Muslims who claim that their forefather, their ancestor is Yishmael, they are one religion that believes in the Almighty. They are one religion that believes in the validity of the Torah, that Moshe Rabbeinu was a Navi, that it was a prophet, and the Torah is true. And Esav, Edom, is a progeny of Avraham Avinu as well, through Yitzchak. They as well believe in the creator of the world, in one creator, in one God. They have made their additions for whatever their private reasons were when they made this, when they concocted this religion for the world at large, what they thought was necessary for the world at large to accept this creator God. But Avraham Avinu's children are the only ones who really believe in one God, the God of creation and the Torah, which is quite amazing. So Yivarechecha is Avraham Avinu. Hashem, that name of loving kindness, we might attach to Yitzchak, our forefather Isaac, as he was an Oila Tmima. He was prepared to give his life. He gave no resistance. As a matter of fact, he told Avraham Avinu, bind me so that I don't move and become unfit for a korban. So Hashem could refer to Yitzchak, and V'yishmerecha is certainly Yaakov Avinu, because There's a pasuk in the Torah that says, "Ushmarticha b'chol asher telech." I will guard you wherever you go. And Yaakov Avinu needed a lot of protection because Esav was out to get him. Esav's Malach was out to get him. Lavan was out to get him. And when he went to Mitzrayim, he needed Shmira. When the story with Dinah happened, the story with Yosef happened, he had many difficulties in his life and he needed much protection. Oh, I thought that's quite interesting. So let's look at the next pasuk. Yor Hashem panav elecha v'chuneka. I thought, well, Yoel, there is a medrash that says that Hashem told Avram Avinu, as you're lighting the way for me, Achatar Meir Lefonai, in where you live in Mesopotamia, come and cast this light in Eretz Yisrael. So Yoel, Hashem panav Yoel could certainly have to do with Avram Avinu. Hashem is again Yitzchak Avinu because Yitzchak's characteristic was he was the Oila Tmima. He was the perfect. He gave his life entirely away for Hashem. That's all he wanted to do. That was his act. Panav, if Panav refers to Yaakov Avinu, it says that Panav chakuk al kisei hakoved, a likeness of Jacob, our forefather Jacob, a likeness of his face is carved into the Almighty's throne of glory. Oh, so that's good. Now, Elecha would refer to Moshe Rabbeinu. Pe el pe, to you, Elecha to you, just as I spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu. Pe el pe, I spoke to him mouth to mouth, directly, not through signs and not through symbols and not through metaphors. I spoke to him as a man speaks to his friend. It was some kind of direct communication, directly. Elecha, and this blessing will come to you from me directly. Vichuneka, and you will be graceful, desirous, beloved, whatever that chen, you will have the chen of a child. You will be my beloved. Motza chen bamidbar. It says that Hashem found his people that they were graceful in his eyes. They were beloved in his eyes. They were delightful. Cheneftik. Vichuneka. The job of the Kohen, of Aaron HaKohen, was always to take away whatever separated between the Jew and his Father in heaven. He was always trying to be Makarev, the Jews, to bring the Jews close to Hashem. And his service in the Mishkan was to take away any blemish so that they could be totally cheneftik, totally beloved. That was. Then we go to Yisa, the last pasuk. Yisa, as referring to Avram Avinu, it says, after the Malach called him and told him, don't bring Yitzchak, do not sacrifice Isaac. It says, Vayisas Einov, he lifted his eyes and he saw Ayel Achar, I'm not sure what that word Achar means, I've been looking, another ram. Yitzchak was not a ram, but Ayel Achar Ne'echaz, trapped or caught in the brambles by his horns. After Avram Avinu brings the karban, after he brings the Ayel, he sacrifices the ram, the Malach says, interesting, Ki Yan Asher Asisas Hadavar Zeh, because two words that both express because, for this reason. Ki is because, and Yan is also because. Asher Asisa es Hadavar Hazeh, that you did this thing, and it doesn't say which thing, that you did this thing. V'lo chosachta, and you did not hold back your son. You did not withhold from me your one and only son. I will bless you. But what is this notion of because you did this thing and did not sacrifice Yitzchak? you might say that is the second thing is that he brought the ayil. What was so great about bringing a sacrifice? If he was ready to sacrifice Yitzchak, what was so great about his sacrificing a ram? Well, in Avram Avinu's place, the most horrendous thing that could have possibly happened to him was that he should have to bring Yitzchak as a sacrifice, and his dream for the continuity of his belief and his connection to Hashem should be transferred further through children to all the generations. Nonetheless, he was prepared to do it. But you would imagine that when the Malach told him, okay, you don't have to do that, I was just checking, that he would have picked up Yitzchak and run away from there, just fly. He didn't do that. He said, but I want to do a service. I would do anything. I can't go away without doing anything. I need to do, what should I do? And he raised his eyes looking for something that he could do as a service. And then he saw the ram. Because you really, all you care about is our relationship. And you really love me. And you want to serve me in any way. And you were even prepared to bring Yitzchak, but even more than that, you trusted me enough to do it and still have in your heart a feeling of trust and wanting to be connected to me. Even though you and I both knew that the only thing you wanted was this son. So Yisa would refer to Avram Avinu. Hashem would again refer to Yitzchak Avinu. Panav would again refer, the face would again refer, Hashem should lift up his countenance. He should lift his countenance, shine his countenance, lift his countenance to us. Panav would again be Yankov Avinu because his face is on the throne of glory. Elecha would again be Moshe Rabbeinu, this direct connection. V'yosem would be Aaron HaKohen because it says at the pasuk after the Birkas Kohanim says, "V'samu Shmi al bnei Yisrael," they will put my name on the Jews, and I will bless them. Perhaps referring to the Kohanim and Klal Yisrael both. I will bless them. So V'yosem is Aaron HaKohen. L'cha would be Yosef HaTzadik. And Sholem is certainly David HaMelech, because when he will come, Mashiach, that's when there will be Sholem. When we will see completely what we have no concept of now. And everything we do, really, were we to contemplate, what on earth did we come here for? Did we come here and Hashem knew we were going to sin and he was going to punish us, and that's what he wants to do with us? And we are so bad that we have to be in Golus 2,000 years and go through the most horrendous kind of suffering and denigration, degradation. My goodness, what the Jews have gone through. Is that what Hashem wants? So I was thinking, these people that we have mentioned, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Moshe, and Aharon, Yosef HaTzadik, and David HaMelech, these are the Ushpizin who come. These are the foundation of Klal Yisrael. These are the people through whom the blessing comes. It's their merit that brings us this unbelievable blessing. Let's look at their lives. Do their lives look like lives of unimaginable comfort, glory, pleasure, no pain, no suffering, smooth as silk? I think not. I think if we look at the lives of these people, everyone, much, much challenge, serious challenge. My goodness. Aaron HaKohen, whose whole desire was to bring the Jews close to his Father in heaven, he was the one who made the Egel. And he made it only because he was trying to delay them. And he thought he could delay. He said, Chag LaHashem Mocha, tomorrow we'll make the great celebration, the great worship, and Hashem didn't protect him. It was the worst thing imaginable for him that he should make the Egel for Klal Yisrael. Much suffering. Yaakov Avinu, Yosef HaTzadik being taken away from him, and he did not know what happened to him all those years. And he had a Kabbalah. He knew that if all his children would live through his lifetime, then these children would establish Klal Yisrael. They would establish the nation of Israel. But if one of them were to die, then that whole plan was over. Imagine the suffering that he had. And Hashem didn't reveal to him that Yosef was alive in Mitzrayim. These people had challenges which defy our imagination. David HaMelech was chased by his own son who wanted to kill him, among other things. The tests were unbelievable. They were the tests for the greatest people of their belief. And we need to understand that the purpose of our being here is our service under those circumstances. Circumstances that try man's soul, that test his belief and trust. On the other hand, I just want to say about the fact that we're in Golos for 2,000 years and have to go through all this suffering, that it's important to contemplate, and I hope I don't run over my time limit, but it's important to consider the stories. On one hand, for instance, three points I'd like to make. The first point is the angels don't understand either. And that's good, because if they don't understand, how on earth can we understand? When Hashem took us through the Yam Suf, they complained bitterly, saying that the Jews were also Oidei Avodah Zarah. They also worshipped idols. And why should the Jews be saved and the Egyptians should be drowned? Either drown both of them or save both of them, but it's not fair that the Jews should be saved and the Egyptians should drown. In another instance, when Hashem wanted to give the Jews the Torah, they said, leave the Torah here in heaven with us. We know what to do with it. And then Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, answer them. But they don't understand the Rabban Shalom's ways. And the final one that's really the kicker is when Rabbi Akiva was being torn to pieces, the Malachim said, this is the reward for Torah? Now, Rabbi Akiva, we must remember, started learning when he was 40 and built himself up. He didn't give up. He just kept on learning for the sake of learning. He had no idea that in the end he would be Rabbi Akiva, who established Torah Sheba'al Peh. He with his 5 Talmidim. Now, this Rabbi Akiva, who went through everything he went through to get to reach his place in Torah, we are taught that 24,000 of his Talmidim died because they didn't know how to behave respectfully and kindly to each other. Imagine what it was like for the teacher to lose those Talmidim. And he started all over again with 5. And when the Roman soldiers were tearing him to pieces, and he was saying, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, the angels cried, this is the reward for Torah? Zu Torah, this is Torah and this is its reward? And Hashem said, I cannot answer you. If you insist on an answer, I will have to return the entire universe to Tohu Vavohu as it was before it was created. There's no way that I can explain to you what this creation is about. It's my secret, and it will only be known in the end. So the angels don't understand. That's number one. Number two is we don't appreciate ourselves. We have no way of knowing what it is we accomplish in this world. I venture to say, especially now that we're in Golos, that many of us don't feel like great tzaddikim. I would venture to say that that's the truth. However, there are many stories in the Gemara telling us about the tzidkus of various people who looked quite simple on the outside. And I'll tell you that, looking it up, because there's one one of these stories that's often quoted, and I wanted to see it in the source. And then I found three additional stories. The first story was with Abai and Rava, who were Tanoim, and they knew somehow, they were told that the bloodletter Abba receives a greeting from the heavenly yeshiva every day. And Abaya received it only Erev Shabbos, and Rava only Erev Yom Kippur. And Abaya and Rava were very perplexed. What on earth could the bloodletter do that was so fabulous and so much more import than what they did? And these were Rizikit Tzadikim, great Tzadikim and great Talmidei Chachamim. What could this bloodletter be doing that allowed him this great gift in this world? So they decided to send two Chachamim to find out what really is the nature of this person, what kind of avodah, what service is he doing? What is his service to the Almighty that brings him this unbelievable gift? So first of all, he practiced in a very private place, and the place for payment was out of the way. So nobody, not he, and no one would see what the people were paying. And he did that so that the poor people who didn't have money to pay him would not be embarrassed and would not pay and not be embarrassed. The second thing was that he was very careful with issues of tznius. And he had a special robe that he put on his patients, and that just had a slit in the place where he made the slit to let the blood. That was especially so that women who would come for treatment would not be disrobed. In addition, when Talmidei Chachamim came, when scholars came, he treated them without payment, told them not to pay. He gave them food and drink before he did his procedure. When they left, he gave them money so that they should buy good food, eat well so that they should maintain their health. That was what he did. So then these two scholars came, and he told them they don't have to pay, and he gave them food and drink, and then he made the procedure, and then they told him that they came from far, so he said that they came late in the day, they should sleep in his house. He spread out rugs on the floor for them to sleep. The next morning they left, and they took the rugs with them, and they went to the shuk. How do you say shuk in English? The marketplace. And they waited till he would come. And it doesn't say there how they knew he would come, but they waited. And he came. And when he came, he saw them, and he went over to them. And they asked him, they showed him the rugs, and they asked him, how much are these worth? As if they wanted to sell them in the marketplace. And he said how much they were. He said a certain amount of money. And they said, aren't they worth more than that? So Abba said, no, that's what I paid for them. So then they asked Abba, but you knew we took your rugs. What did you think when you saw that we had taken your rugs? So he said, well, I thought that there was a issue of pidyon shvuyim to save somebody from jail or from punishment or something, and you needed money immediately. And you were embarrassed to ask me, and you were embarrassed to tell me that you were taking the rugs to sell them for this particular mitzvah of saving some Jewish prisoner or captive. So they said, my goodness. And then they said, well, these are your rugs, so please, we'd like to return them to you. And he said, no. As soon as I saw they were missing, I said, let them be used for an act of charity, and they're no longer mine. I gave them away. End of story about bloodletter. Sometimes you look at a man, you wouldn't pay 2 cents for him. And then you might be very well amazed at the true value of this person and the nature of his service. The next story is a story about a Reb Roika, and he was in the marketplace, and Eliyahu used to come, and he asked Eliyahu Hanavi, are there any B'nai Aliyah here, anybody who's going to Olam Haba? And Eliyahu answered no. And then he said, that man over there. So Reb Roika immediately went over to this person, asked him, what is your occupation? And the man said, I can't talk to you now. Come back tomorrow and I'll talk to you. And he ran away. So he came back the next day and he found the man there and he asked him, what's your occupation? And he said, I'm a jailer. What do you do as a jailer? So he said, well, I separate the Jewish men and the Jewish women, and I put my bed in between so there shouldn't be any suspect behavior. No one should suspect them of having done anything that shouldn't be done. And what else did he asked him, why do you wear black shoes? Only the goyim wear black shoes. And why don't you have a string of tchelis in your tzitzis, in your fringes? So he said, because I work between goyim and I don't want them to know I'm Jewish, so I dress like them, because sometimes they talk between themselves and I hear that they're passing a decree to harm the Jews. And as soon as I hear about it, I run to the tzaddikim, to the chachomim, and I tell them a decree like this and this is going to be passed, daven, so that it should be annulled. Why didn't you answer me this yesterday? So he said, because I just heard of a decree and I couldn't waste any time. I had to go and tell them. End of the story of the jailer. And the last story is again with Eliyahu Hanavi, and Rebbe Roika asked if there are any B'nai Aliyah, and he said, yes, these two brothers. So he went over to them and asked them, what do you do? And they said they're jesters. And whenever we see somebody sad, we try to cheer them up by telling them jokes. And if we see that people had an argument, we try to make peace between them. The three things that the world stands on, Gemilas Chasodim is an equal partner of Torah and Avodah. And Gemilas Chasodim stands, in that Mishnah, Gemilas Chasodim is mentioned before Avodah, before Torah. What Hashem wants from a human being, he knows exactly what we're like. Chachamim tell us in three things a human being is like a malach, and in three things like an animal. He eats and drinks like an animal, he procreates like an animal, and he excretes like an animal. And in three things he's like a malach. He has das like a malach. Das is a form of knowledge. Vayeda Adam Eschava Ishtoi. Das is the kind of knowledge of an intimate connection. They have das like a malach, and that is to provide them with the ability to connect to the Rebbeinu Shalom lovingly. They have das like a malach. They speak like a malach. Misaprim b'loshen kodesh. They speak the holy tongue. And hoilchem b'koyma skufa. They go upright. Their head is on the top, not like an animal bent down to the ground. So my holy husband, Zechar Baruch, once asked, so what is the human being? He says that's exactly what he is. Between two diametrically opposed existences, having to unify them, to integrate them, not a simple job at all. The job of bringing the Rebbeinu Shalom down into this world so that everybody recognizes what the Creator is. What Avraham Avinu did outstandingly was have Hakaras HaTov to the Rebbeinu Shalom, recognize Hashem as the lover and the giver. Hakaras HaTov, gratitude, that was the beginning. Now, he understood that if Hashem gives so freely without demanding anything in return, that is what he likes. And therefore Avraham Avinu began the establishment of Klal Yisrael on the basis of Emunah and Chesed. Because he had Hakaras HaTov for what he perceived were the unbelievable gifts he had received. And they asked, he had no teacher to teach him, he had no father to teach him. How did he find the Ribono Shel Olam? And Chazal say he had two kidneys flowing with wisdom. Hashem endowed him with a nature to be able to appreciate, enjoy the world. And then he looked for the source of the benefactor. Who makes all this that we enjoy? Part of our trouble with suffering is we have no perspective. We don't understand the suffering that's happening to us and what function it has. But a far greater problem is we have a hard time really appreciating every single blessing, none of which we have earned. 2 eyes, not 1 eye. A brain that works with billions of neurons, that we can walk on our feet, that we have ideas, that we can be creative, that the sun shines, that there are flowers and birds and babies with tiny little fingernails and tiny eyelashes, that we can love. Love our children, we love them unconditionally. Through these babies, we learn what love means. We also learn what we're about because our children aren't any smarter in making the right decisions than we are. But we see why Hashem forgives us and why he loves us, because sometimes they do the right thing. And sometimes it's for the right reason, because they love us too. So these people taught us that it is a bracha. We are receiving constantly a bracha. And the bracha is, though, an eternal bracha. Like the bracha of Avraham Avinu, until this day, we recognize his glory and his heroic living. And for all the other people, for Yitzchak Avinu and her Yaakov, we recognize that the quality of life that's worth living and what makes a human being great and what makes a human being integrate that spiritual world with the physical world, that is love and giving. And that's perhaps why we say the psukim of Birchas Koyanim after we make the bracha for Talmud Torah. Hashem wants us to know we do the job and understand a little bit about why it might be as hard as it is. It doesn't mean we aren't good, because those great people went through intense suffering and had great, unbelievable accomplishments. Thank you.
Rebtezen, thank you so much. It was amazing. Thank you. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself. If you have any questions for the Rebtezen, you can unmute now. Anybody?
Can I just?
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Danielle Schoenbrunn, and Rebtezen, I think you know me.
Of course I know you.
Rebtezen,
I love you.
I love you too. I love you too very much. Chen, the Yiddish word chen, is it possibly meaning like charming? Is there a charming, the word charming?
Okay, yes, charming, yes.
Charming.
Yes, that's a good word.
Okay, that was my question. And thank you so much. I hope you do this more and more every week.
Thank you.
If all possible. I know you're busy with your family and so on, but this is so beneficial for all of us. We love you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions?
I would like to thank the Rebtezen for the perspective that she gave us. It was excellent.
Rebtezen, did you hear that? She'd like to thank you for the perspective that you gave over.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Anybody else with any questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Joyce. Is that okay?
Really?
Rebtezen, first of all, thank you so much for all the words have just been unbelievable. I've been taking notes and everything. And when you were talking about the Ushpizin, you never really mentioned why Lecha is for Yosef.
That's right, I did not. L'cha itself is nun. And Yosef is the tzaddik yisoid olam. He is the foundation of the entire universe. And he is hidden in his foundationness. It's not clear that, it is not clear that he is the tzaddik. Certainly in the beginning it wasn't clear. And interesting, what did he do? He had his brothers in his hands. Instead of saying, you scallywags, you scoundrels, what happened to my dreams indeed? He didn't say a word. He said, don't feel bad. Hashem sent me here so that the family should survive. Don't feel bad. He never, ever stayed alone with Yaakov Avinu when Yaakov came to Mitzrayim, because he was sure that Yaakov would ask him what happened, and he never wanted to tell on his brothers. L'cha is some kind of revelation and connection to the Rebbeinu Shalom that few people in this physical creation are ever able to obtain.
Wow, it's beautiful. Thank you. I got the lechas from the gematria of Lamed Chaf.
Yes, Lamed being 30, Chaf being 20.
Absolutely amazing. I just also wanted to mention my brother-in-law went to High, but
Really?
yeah, Howard Schulman.
Howard Schulman.
Yeah, or Robert Schulman.
Robert Schulman, the cardiologist?
Yes. He's an internist actually.
He's an internist, but he was the Rebbe's doctor.
Could be.
Yeah, I don't remember him from Highlight. I think he's younger than I am.
Whatever. Okay.
Whatever. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I really, really enjoyed every word.
I'm really happy.
Rebtezen?
Yes, dear.
Hi, you know me as Hannah Zuber. And
Sure. Super. Okay.
I just wanted to say hi and thank you very much for such an inspiring talk.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else before I wrap this up?
I would like to say hello to the Rebtezen, and I just want to say how I remember fondly all the talks you used to give every single week at your shul. And thank you for that, and thank you for this evening. It was really inspiring.
Thank you. I didn't get your name.
Rosalind Jason.
Oh, Rosalind. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Rebtezen,
Yes.
I'm just thinking back to the highlight days. I'm also from Far Rockaway, but I don't know that I didn't tell him by Rabbi Rubin, but there are some amazing people who came out of highlight because of or despite it, and you being one among them. I'm thinking of someone like Chaim Septimus and a lot of very fine people.
Oh, they had very fine staff.
Yes.
And Rabbi Lyman was an outstanding human being. Oh my gosh, and an outstanding Jew. And I remember the talk was he was a professor of law at some university, and he wore a toupee because he didn't want to teach in Harlem Cup, and you weren't allowed to wear a kippah. And his sons were very fine. The staff was really, I remember Rabbi Weissman, he was another person. Oh my gosh. He went through the war, lost his wife and a child or two. And he had such tremendous emunah, but the suffering was, to me, I was sure I experienced his suffering, and I loved him so much. And he had no children. He didn't have children after the war. And Sarah Blumenkrantz and Rabbi Avi Gold was a teacher there when I was there, and Isaacson, very, very fine people.
I see. You are one of the products, so we are enjoying that now.
Thank you.
Okay, ladies, thank you so much. Rebtezen, thank you so much for being a guest on Drops of Inspiration. It's been really a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
ladies, just before we go, I just want to let you know that next week our guest is Dr. Gila Gabriella, who is, she has her doctorate in human behavior and she heals through gemstones. She's going to give us an amazing talk, So look forward to seeing you all next week on Drops of Inspiration. And Rebbetzin, thank you so much again. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Lots of love.
Bye.
You.
Gracias.